Morning LDBC, this is QuestX. I'm coming back at you with another video. This is going to stay within the UFC family. My latest video on Jon Jones, I invite people to check it out. My message to Jon, it still stands. I wish him nothing but the best. But moving on, let's talk about Conor McGregor versus Nate Diaz to the rematch. My brother, let me give you a little backstory on what brought me to the UFC. As far as watching, my baby brother is a phenomenal wrestler. He wrestled in high school, he wrestled in college, and he is a good wrestler, good champion wrestler. He's always been into mixed martial arts. He was always, as a kid, watching it. Whereas my passions went more towards boxing, his went more towards the horse Gracies of the world. You know, watching when UFC, mixed martial arts was first brought on television. So I never really got into it. He loved it, and he actually follows the fighters. I'm actually trying to encourage him to get his own channel to talk to people about it because, listen, as much as I'm into weightlifting, staying in shape, boxing, the closest thing I ever took to mixed martial arts, which was Okinawa-Ryu, and that was when I was a kid. My passions went more towards what was on the basketball field and basketball court and football field. So, but anyway, we were watching the press conference, and something that I do when I'm watching face-offs and I'm watching interviews between two fighters and they're in the same room with each other, I'm looking at the body language. I'm paying attention to certain things, and one of the key things I always look for, if two fighters have met each other before, there's usually, between the two fighters, after it, there's a mutual respect. And there's the underlying understanding on both fighters' parts of what's being brought to the table. And I as a, somewhat fan of the UFC and, the little that I dabbled in, because my brother tried to get me into it. And, we used to go down to the gyms and try to do that shit. My brother was far superior in it. As good as I was at stand-up game because of my background in martial arts, I was nowhere near where I needed to be on the ground, y'all. It's a much different beast on the ground. That's why I got respect for those that master the ground. And correct me if I'm wrong, and my brother was explaining it to me that the Diaz brothers are master class in both the stand-up and the ground game. And I'm going to be honest with you, watching the body language of this press conference, which took on Nate Diaz, was the exact same he has always been. And Conor McGregor, it was a little bit hard to read. He started off humble, then he veered off to being hyperactive, then he went right back down to being humble again. Then he didn't seem to keep himself on an even keel. And that just tells me, and in all my years of watching combat sports, that defeat that he suffered at the hands of Nate Diaz really affected him. But I will give him credit. He is handling it a hell of a lot better than that Ronda Rousey chick, who my brother absolutely cannot stand. And, where the UFC world was going crazy, my brother was always talking about how, that she's actually a crappy fighter, and that when she fights somebody, and he literally called the victory when she lost. And it was something that I noticed, and even I'm like on my couch and I'm looking at, I'm like, dude, he does not look like he looks like it actually bothers him. And the thing was shocking, and what stands out to me is, and I've done a video, and I'm not even going to try to disrespect any real Conor McGregor fans, and I hate that I always have to use the R word when it comes to combat fighting, in combat fighting when it comes to certain fans. But unfortunately, with the age of the internet, you have a lot of what I call the fanboys, and they kind of dominate, and they kind of can drown out real mixed martial arts fans. It seems to me that Nate Diaz has Conor McGregor's number. He has it. You can see it in just how his approach to when he was talking in the press conference, which, by the way, I'm not too sure. My brother and I was like, yo, do you think that the whole microphone situation was done on purpose? Because I think they knew questions about Jon Jones was coming up, and it was just kind of weird. But Not to mention with him, Nate Diaz not really being able to answer half the questions that were posed to him, it just seemed like Conor McGregor is trying to psych himself into believing that he can actually beat Nate Diaz. Like, and then I'm sitting up there. So after the presser, I'm sitting there talking to my brother, and I'm saying, well, you know, they said that, you know, and when I watched the fight, you know, Conor McGregor really was like literally kicking the shit out of Nate Diaz in the head. And something my brother actually brought up to me, he was like, do you understand how for a mixed martial artist, how long it takes to actually physically prepare for a fighter that he's never even seen before, and he hasn't experienced fighting a guy that small before? Because just like where Conor McGregor was saying his size was, he didn't anticipate Nate Diaz's size, Nate Diaz also had to anticipate Conor McGregor's size and speed. So to take that into consideration, that he didn't even have a full training camp, he's coming into this fight with a full training camp. He's seen what Conor McGregor can do, and he's mastered both stand up and ground and pound. Therefore, who has to work harder to get to whose level? And when my brother brought it down to me like that, I was like, oh, all right. So, you know, maybe it could turn out being worse for Conor McGregor, this fight. And he goes, well, it can go two ways. Either Nate Diaz can go in and he can get sloppy, and Conor can capitalize on that. When you strike on your man, it's not going to be a one strike and you're out with this kind of a fighter, because as you move up in competition, the chins get better. And I go, yeah, exactly. Same way in boxing. So he's breaking it down to me, and he's sitting there saying, listen, at the end of the day, I take in all the factors as to who's the better all-around complete fighter. And the better all-around complete fighter, fans don't want to hear it. Fans don't want to talk about it. Because Conor McGregor is a loudmouth, and because he is a showman, people are going to automatically, instinctually go towards Conor McGregor for the victory, thinking irrationally and emotionally. But if you look at everything on paper, like many fans looked at it on paper the first fight, and they told people, and I literally was like, you know, I went on YouTube and I watched a lot of the highlights of Nate Diaz, and I was like, damn, this kid can fight, man. Him and his brother. I actually want to see his brother, you know, back in the ring, but he was saying that he had to explain a whole bunch of other shit to me. That's a whole other story about his brother. But that, logically speaking, people who understood the ground and pound game and the stand-up game knew that Conor McGregor was at a great disadvantage that night. And it's going to just be the same exact thing come August. So I got a question to you guys, who MMA fans, boxing fans who watch MMA. What do you guys think? I'm confused when it comes to this shit, because to me, on one hand, I see exactly what my brother's saying. Then on the other hand, I see that you know, I don't know what could happen. I don't know how much more advanced can a mixed martial artist, and the length of time that it's been since their last meeting, master the ground and good ground defense and being able to avoid takedowns. I just don't know. I really don't know. And then the fact that my brother said that, which it sounds repetitive when it comes to Conor, he's talking about coming out guns blazing. He still hasn't learned that he can't be a cowboy in there with tougher competition, and that's going to get him in trouble. And I'm like, that makes sense. When you're used to fighting smaller guys, you can come out guns blazing. And if he does the same thing, you know, we could be looking for a short night for Conor McGregor. So let me know what you guys think. That was just my little thing about the whole press conference. I want to see the fight. I'm definitely going to go and see the fight. I'm not going to rent the fight, but I'll probably like go to Buffalo Wild Wings or some shit like that. But y'all let me know what y'all think. QuestX, I'm out.